You may know it, it's pretty well known. It's entitled The Litany for Survival. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing apart on the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once before and after, seeing a now that can bring futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who are imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hope to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain, and when the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish, and when we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcome. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. Audre Lorde, who died in the early 90s, I believe. She was 15 years old. She died of cancer. But in her lifetime, she wrote extraordinary poems and speeches. She was Black, she was feminist, she was lesbian, and she wrote over and over again about speaking even through fear, even through the knowledge that her words would not be heard, because to be silent was not an option. She once said at a speech she made at Harvard that she wanted to define herself, because if she didn't, the fantasies of others would crush her and eat her alive. As we reflect together on the idea, on the possibility of widening the circles around us, of widening the circles of our compassion, I want to describe and share with you a beautiful spiritual exercise. Coincidentally, it's called Widening the Circles. It's also called the Four Voices. This is how it works. Usually you do it, and today I'm going to model it for you, but maybe if you all like it, we'll find a time when we can do this together in like a workshop setting. But you get groups of 3 people. If it's more people than that, it takes too long. But you get groups of 3 people. And you pick an issue that matters a lot to you. It might be a social justice issue, for example. And then each person takes turns speaking in 4 different voices. The first, and this is what I will do, I will speak in my own voice about this issue, this thing that means a lot to me. And the second is to speak in the voice of someone who holds the diametrically opposite perspective than I do. So we need to work to do that. And to do it without getting snarky or judgmental or all those things that I know you're not. You're all very good people, but I get, tempted to. But to really speak with the respect and the honor that we carry in our faith. The third voice is a non-human voice. It might be a plant, it might be a mountain, it might be an animal, it might be a cloud, it might be a non-human voice. Because it's easy to believe that what we care about and what we do doesn't impact the world around us, but it does. And the fourth voice is a voice from the future, a voice from the seventh generation after ours. The seventh generation principle is a principle from the Iroquois Confederacy. And it's really helpful to think ahead. What would someone in that time say? I learned this exercise from the great Joanna Macy. Are any of you familiar with her? She's a fantastic spiritual teacher and leader and a lifelong, she spent many decades as an activist for the environment, for spiritual ecology. And in fact, she has made the best translations of the poems of María Uitti I've ever read, and the one I read to you at the beginning is from her, so she's a really gifted person. So let me start. I invite you to take a deep breath. I am speaking to you in the voice of Maria, Reverend Maria, Emmy, Mombi, friend, amiga, elder. As far back as I can remember, I have known that I was not meant to survive. Not only was I born very premature and not expected to live, I was born to a lineage of women of Puerto Rico whose fertility had been taken. They had been forcibly sterilized, anywhere from 35 to 40% of my mother's generation and her mother's generation, for reasons that had everything to do with the consideration that people from Puerto Rico are inferior and therefore should not be allowed to live. And I hope I mentioned that these sterilizations were forced. Folks were not given a choice. The majority of human beings currently living in and on this planet belong in some way into the category of inferiority, either because of race or racial heritage, poverty, skin color, colonized status, gender identity, neurodivergence, etc., etc. The issue that I am passionate about and that I care about is the issue of the cruelty we human beings perpetrate on one another and that we justify over and over and over again in the name of you don't deserve to live, you are less than, you are expendable. We took you from your country and brought you here to enslave you because we could do that, because you're only 3/4 of a human being. This issue is the spark that fuels my own spiritual calling and my longing to be here with people like you to see what we can together do to change these waves of cruelty. This is why I became a Unitarian Universalist and eventually a Unitarian Universalist minister. Because our tradition calls us, actually it doesn't let us. You talked about the sideline, it doesn't let us sit on the sidelines of this ongoing and massive genocide. I want to say again, the entire world is witnessing at this time the genocide of people in Gaza, of families, the West Bank, children, thousands dying every day to fulfill the cruelty of philosophies that advocate the eradication of entire religious communities. For 500 years, the entire world has failed to witness the longest colonization of any people on the planet, and that is the people of Puerto Rico. First by the Spanish, who arrived in 1492, and then by the United States, who arrived in 1898. One of the most fertile lands in the world now imports almost 100% of its food at extremely high prices, because if you want to bring something by ship it to Puerto Rico, you have to do it on a US ship. So you might be buying bananas from Jamaica, they have to go from Jamaica to Miami and then back, and all of that surcharge is being paid by people who grew hundreds of varieties of bananas for centuries. I invite you to take a deep breath. I now speak to you in the voice of Tanya Bennett. I'm a queer, middle-aged, white woman, and I live and grew up in a very rural part of Georgia. I hear people talk about racism and how we have to change racism, but who's thinking about me? Who's thinking about what I've had to deal with? I grew up poor. Everyone called me and my family white trash. It was okay to taunt us and to tease us and to bully us in school because we weren't good enough. We weren't good enough for the people in this town. When I was in high school, a group of boys from rich families attacked me. Who was there for me? All I want in my life is to be with my wife, raise our children, and make enough money so that they don't have to go through what I went through. I want people to realize that just because I have white skin doesn't mean I have it easy. And thank God, the politicians in my town decided to build a prison here, because otherwise none of us would have jobs. I don't like how they treat some of the prisoners. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's Christian. What am I going to do? This is where I get to make my living. I invite you to take a deep breath. I now speak to you in the voice of our planet, the planet Earth. I've always been here, but now I don't know if I'm going to survive. I was there when Cain killed his brother Abel, and Abel's blood sank into the ground that covers me, and I felt his pain. And for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, I have felt every time you humans hurt each other, you kill each other. You spill so much blood. You hurt me. You think that I'm not breathing and living. You take away the things I need to survive and you still want more. I don't understand it. You could have everything you need. Every human being could have everything. Could grow enough food. We could share resources and have everything in this beautiful world. I don't understand. I don't understand how you don't feel you don't seem to feel the depth of all of this. I ask you, is it possible to stop and just listen and reflect together on how much more humans could do if humans worked together and loved each other and loved the earth? Maybe that doesn't sound reasonable because it's been done differently for so long, but maybe it could change. I know, because I also see how much you love each other. I know that's in you. I know how much you love the beauty that is on this land that I am. Please, lean into that. I invite you to take a deep breath. I speak to you now in the voice of Jess. I am a mixed race, cisgender man, 25 years old. And I hope that you can hear me, because in the 150, 200 years since you were alive, a lot of things have changed. I wish we had today the planet that you had. I wish that the things that seem to have to happen between then and now didn't have to happen. There's been a lot of damage. There have been a lot of wars and a lot of loss. There aren't as many people now here as there were. It's harder to live here, but we have made lots and lots of technological advances, and we have medical things that we can do that you probably couldn't even imagine, and we have robots, and we have just so much artificial intelligence, and so much that we can do, and I know it was this way in your time too, but sometimes that's all that good stuff is only available to some of the people. And if they have it, they're living to be like 150 years old. Can you believe it? And healthy. Some of us like me are trying, like I know you did, we're trying to make it so that everybody gets to have those benefits. And if there's anything we can do to bring back part of the planet that has been lost, I hope we can. And if you can hear me, think about us and say a prayer for us, that we may live on. invites you to take a breath. Speak in one's own voice. Speak in the voice of someone who has a completely different point of view. To speak in a non-human voice. To speak in a voice from the future.